When truth-tellers dare to expose the secrets of the corrupt, the criminal, or the sinister, they face serious backlash. Whether it's whistleblowers, defectors, or witnesses, these informants often find their lives threatened, leading to some eerie disappearances without explanation. Number 10. Serving as an Iranian general in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Ali Raza Asgari was also appointed Deputy Defense Minister and a cabinet member of the Iranian President Mohammad Khatami. During the 80s, Asgari was the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, who helped build Hezbollah, and in the 90s he was the top Iranian intelligence official, who during this time was involved in the transfer of captured pilot Ron Arad. According to an Israeli website called Debka File, Asgari allegedly ran Iranian operations in Iraq and was reportedly linked to the 20th of January Karbala provincial headquarters raid in 2007. During his time as an intelligence official, Asgari was recruited as a spy. That recruitment came in 2003 when he headed off on a business trip. Although it was never revealed which Western intelligence agency was responsible for naming him a spy, some sources suggest a joint operation between the CIA and Mossad. Asgari would turn against his own country, becoming a mole for his newfound employers. The spy, whether he provided the information willingly or under duress, would provide some crucial intelligence on Hezbollah's organizational structure. He would also spill the secrets of Iran's nuclear program, code names, and even the locations of secret facilities. He divulged some details about Syria's secret nuclear site, which would later be destroyed, and even identified the nuclear program, who would also later be assassinated. Asgari, a high-up and trusted figure, found himself sitting on a gold mine of information, making him not only a target for opposing countries, but also a threat against his own country, should he decide to defect. By 2006, the spy began to suspect he was under investigation by VEVAK, the Iranian intelligence service, which understandably made him increasingly paranoid. It would be that same year that the Bush administration began coordinating his escape route and asylum. Before that escape could take place, though, an eerie and intriguing mystery would unfold. On the 7th of February 2007, Asgari embarked on a business trip from Damascus to Istanbul. Before he left, he reserved a room at a luxury hotel located on the European side of the city. But upon his arrival in the area, he would check into a different hotel, the modest Galan, where he was spotted on a security camera. He remained in contact with his family upon his arrival there, at least until the 9th of February, when his phone mysteriously stopped working. The series of events that took place after this remain unclear, but what is known is that Asgari has never been seen again. Iran has insisted that he was kidnapped by both the CIA and Mossad, whereas the Western media reported that he willingly defected and sought asylum within the United States. They alleged that he made use of 3 fake passports during this escape. That being said, neither the Israeli nor the United States government have made public comments relating to the disappearance of the alleged mole. 17 days after he vanished, Iran would notify Interpol of the vanishing, after which the then Deputy Defense Minister of Iran proclaimed that they had evidence to suggest that members of the Israeli intelligence service had kidnapped Asgari, supposedly in Turkey, after which he was allegedly taken to Israel. Family members of the missing man would then be thoroughly interrogated and even placed under surveillance. The incident would then trigger a diplomatic conflict with Turkey, which had been accused of complicity. Most interestingly, according to some sources, the government of Turkey would also criticize the United States for allegedly carrying out an operation, whether it be kidnapping or defection without prior notice. As of 2025, no one knows what happened to Ali Raza Asgari, the mole who exposed some critical secrets. Was he kidnapped? Did he defect? Almost 20 years later, we're still no closer to answering this question. Number 9. Serving as an accessory and answer to the question of why is the FBI's troubling history with informants gaining newfound attention was the Wall Street Journal's headline, "The FBI Lost Our Son," a statement that came from the mouths of parents, particularly that of Billy Riley, who served as just one of thousands of members of the FBI's Confidential Human Source Program, an anonymous organization hosting freelance informants and operatives. These individuals are tasked with assisting agents with not only investigative work but also intelligence work. Riley was a young American man when he became part of this program, working with the counterinsurgency agents within the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Detroit office. During his 5 years working there, he would employ several aliases in an effort to maneuver his way into the lives of potential targets. He would educate himself on the Arabic language through online lessons, allowing him to learn of violent plots, financing networks, and even the route used by recruits to wiggle their way into the world of chaos. It was 2014 when the war broke out in Ukraine, forcing Riley's focus to Eastern Europe, where he would become hell-bent on witnessing the clash between the Kremlin and Kiev. The following year, the 28-year-old, eager for recognition, would head for Russia. What Riley wasn't cognizant of, though, was the extent of the FBI's protection of their informants. In the southern area of Russia, close to the Ukrainian border, Riley became involved with a militant movement where men were volunteering to fight against Ukraine. The men would congregate and be collected at a Rostov camp, after which they would be taken across the border and join up with an existing battalion. During this endeavor, Riley maintained communications with his family until the end of June, when it all abruptly stopped. Not long after that, the FBI, for whom Riley was employed, arrived at the home of his immediate family in Detroit. Expecting an explanation on their informant's son's whereabouts, they opened the door. But instead of offering answers, the agents grabbed all phones and laptops and left, subsequently heightening the mystery. Soon, questions about Riley's reason for visiting Russia began to rise. While he appeared to be interested in witnessing the conflict and making a name for himself, family couldn't help but wonder if his FBI handlers had sent him overseas on a mission. The organization, of course, played the ignorance card, suggesting they had no knowledge of his whereabouts or his purpose. Their denials, though, only highlighted a pressing issue where diligence and scrutiny are needed for those who are given special authority. Number 8. Where is Jorge Julio Lopez? This is the question haunting the Argentine community when it comes to the bricklayer and labor activist who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It was 1976 when Argentina heard of a coup, during which the military, under the leadership of Jorge Rafael Videla, would overthrow President Isabel Perón. As the political takeover was underway, the country saw upheaval and violence for the next 7 years, while under the rule of a right-wing military dictatorship. Detention centers had been established in those 7 years, which saw neglect, mistreatment, and even execution, mostly carried out by police officials. Many victims faced illegal arrests, ones that had no reason or charge. They were tortured, made to disappear, or brutally slain. One such victim, who miraculously survived it all, was the bricklayer, Lopez. He'd been arrested in 1976 and held without charges until 1979. During this time within the detention center, he was faced with brutality and violence, but he made it out alive. In 1983, democracy in Argentina was restored, yet the unconstitutional amnesty laws prevented the prosecution of government officials, so the crimes against humanity were left without justice for 22 years. In 2005, the amnesty laws were ruled illegitimate, and forced investigations into the crimes were reopened. Almost instantly, Miguel Echecalas, a Buenos Aires province police commissioner, was arrested. He was among the commissioners to oversee one of the detention centers and was now facing charges for several offenses, including homicide. By now, the survivor, Lopez, was 76 years old, and he would be a key witness in the trial of Echecalas. It was this very man who was the victim of the police officer, and he'd also personally witnessed him execute 5 people while in captivity. Lopez found himself named the key to unlocking the investigation and putting at least one man behind bars to pay for his disturbing acts of violence. During the course of the trial, the witness recounted the events, his testimony serving as evidence. In 2006, he was due to deliver his final testimony against Echecalas, but that effort would be interrupted. On the 18th of September, Lopez left his La Plata home. He was supposed to wait for his nephew to pick him up, but left by himself instead. He was headed to the tribunal courts to serve as a witness, but ominously, he would never arrive there, and he was never seen again. Initially, some suspected that recalling the violent experiences he was forced to endure and witness may have been too much for Lopez, leading to a nervous breakdown. Some even thought the aging man may have simply wandered off. But the truth may be far more sinister. Rumors began to circulate suggesting that Echecolas orchestrated the disappearance to ensure the silence of the key witness. Despite the eerie vanishing and without the testimony, Echecolas was given a life sentence. 8 years later, he was placed on trial again and left the courtroom only to reveal a piece of paper in his hand. Allegedly, there was a message written on it in the former commissioner's own handwriting. According to a photographer, it read, "Kidnap Jorge Julio Lopez." Number 7. Ray Curtis Higging Botham Jr., a lieutenant, became a decorated war hero following World War II. It was also after the war that he and his wife Dorothy, along with their daughter Carol, headed for Vent Hill Farms Army Station just outside Arlington, Virginia. They found themselves having to settle down here with the arrival of the Cold War and Ray being reassigned to Army intelligence, where he would monitor radio operations as a codebreaker from behind the Iron Curtain. The group would later become affiliated with the CIA and was subsequently absorbed into the intelligence agency. As an employee here, Ray often worked long hours, which would continue even when he was reassigned to another top-secret group. This organization was said to be situated at the Arlington Hall Intelligence Station, but he didn't divulge this new assignment to Dorothy. As he became acclimated into the new work, his wife noticed him becoming more tense, tired, and not as attentive as he used to be. Around that time, Dorothy headed to her parents' home in Long Island, taking Carol with her for a 2-week visitation. She phoned the Arlington apartment, only to be met with some shocking news. Allegedly, Ray had gone on leave, and the Higginbotham's home was being cleared by the government, seemingly without explanation. Another 2 weeks would pass before the items were suddenly returned, but none of Dorothy's husband's things were among them. In fact, for 4 weeks, she hadn't seen Ray. A month had gone by, and she was still in Long Island, having heard no word from Ray when she received an unexpected visit. The United States Army arrived at the parents' home without warning and claimed that Ray had been listed as AWOL. No less than a month later, he was named a deserter, and his military benefits were subsequently withdrawn. The alleged Army official who visited Dorothy would suggest that he knew more about what happened, but was not at liberty to discuss it any further. Ray's family would never see him again, but some strange things would happen in the years to follow. In 1987, an article was published in the newspaper, citing claims made by Carol, Ray's daughter. She claimed that back in 1959, she was contacted by a mysterious figure who referred to himself as Archangel, supposedly a former member of the CIA. He told her that Ray was considering changing his name, or had already changed it to Nelson. He also alleged that he was alive and living in the NATO country. He even detailed that this country has crystal-clear lakes, high mountains, and a long history of democracy. Then he divulged something most disturbing, relating to the assignment that the missing official had been on. According to this elusive Archangel, Ray was investigating alleged leaks into nuclear activities just before he eerily disappeared. Allegedly, his disappearance came after an attempt on his life, and was supposedly a forced concealment. The claims made by the figure were certainly disturbing. It implies that Ray may have uncovered something covert, revealing information that no one was supposed to know about. But that's just one of several questions relating to this unsolved case. Many still wonder if he was a deserter or defector, or if his investigations led him to something sinister. Number 6. The name Jim Thompson may sound significantly more familiar. He was a wealthy textile manufacturer who was duly named the legendary Thai Silk King, after playing a pivotal role in revitalizing Thailand's silk industry. Thompson had graduated from Princeton University and had studied architecture at the University of Pennsylvania. From 1931 to 1940, he worked as an architect in New York. But Thompson was more than just the son of a textile manufacturer and an architect. He was an intelligence officer, too. After working in New York, He would begin his work as an intelligence official in the Office of Strategic Services amid the Second World War. Thompson would travel to several locations for work, including North Africa, Europe, and the China-Burma-India theater. And finally, Bangkok. Following his involvement with the CIA, he headed back to Thailand, permanently, where his ventures into the silk industry began. In March of 1967, Thompson was on a quiet holiday in the Malaysian highlands where he visited friends. While there, he headed off on an afternoon walk on Easter Sunday in the Cameron Highlands. A small silver jungle box and his cigarettes had been left on the chair outside the Moonlight Cottage. This suggested that he wasn't planning on being gone for too long. As he left, Thompson reportedly said "goodnight, sweethearts," and subsequently vanished into the orange haze of the late afternoon, never to be seen again. The theories that emerged thereafter were nothing short of sinister. One idea, and the prevailing suggestion, was that Thompson had been kidnapped due to his involvement in spying activities. There's no doubt that during his endeavors within the Central Intelligence Agency, he'd come across some secrets that weren't meant to be spilled, thus leading to exposure of what would have been classified secrets, uncovering figures present within them. Once he was reported missing, an intense search was prompted by local police, who declared Thompson to be lost. Other theories claimed he was attacked by a tiger or fell into an animal pit trap created by an indigenous tribe. But that search consisted of 500 people who found no evidence of either of these things having been the case. Among the searchers were British Army volunteers, U.S. Army observers, Boy Scouts, Malaysian Army personnel, and Thai police. This made the suggestion of kidnapping all the more likely, along with the possibility that he left to do some secret work regarding the Vietnam War. But the story doesn't end there either. Years later, filmmakers, intrigued by the mystery, headed to the area, hoping to uncover the truth as to what happened to them, and they discovered something truly bizarre. Upon his arrival in the jungle, Thompson allegedly requested a meeting with the Communist Party of Malaysia's secret general, Malaysia's most wanted man. The filmmakers subsequently concluded that he met an untimely end, slain by rebels who became suspicious of him and his bizarre request. Number 5. Sounding like the plot of a true Cold War thriller was the shadowy case of Oleg Smolinkov, the features of which made for a compelling chronicle of international espionage, defection, and sinister spy activities. The name wasn't known among those outside of the United States intelligence zone. This was because he was intentionally avoiding attention, maintaining a low profile in order to keep his work going. That work was espionage. It wasn't until 2017 that his name became national news and international news by 2019. The world virtually knew nothing about Oleg until his mysterious disappearance, and his backstory is nothing short of twisted. Oleg was a Russian government official in the Presidential Executive Office, who in 2017 was working as a spy for the Central Intelligence Agency. His mission was to divulge insights into the inner workings of Russian politics, as well as the decision-making process at the highest levels. Given his position within the government and his unassuming nature, Oleg had access to some highly sensitive information, which was of great value to the United States at the time during which the relations of the two superpowers were becoming increasingly unsettled. As he passed along crucial secrets to the U.S., Oleg would begin fearing not only for his personal safety, but also for his family. Espionage carries some pretty lethal consequences should one be caught. The spy was left lurking in the darkness, always looking over his shoulder, and for good reason. It was that year when he and his family headed out on a holiday to Montenegro, a trip which Oleg, his wife, and their 3 children would never return from, and they would never be heard from again. In 2017, the Russian authorities opened a homicide investigation, but the matter was soon closed, despite no answers being found. In September of 2019, a news outlet claimed that the United States aided an unnamed Russian government official to flee while working as a spy for American intelligence. It didn't take long to arrive at an identification for that unnamed figure. With the information coming to light, it seemed that the case was closed, the consensus being that Oleg defected to the U.S., but then another layer was added to the story. Media reports claimed that Oleg was in Virginia, living under his real name. The divulging of this shocking detail led to speculation that it may have been a misinformation ploy. Russian authorities also declared him to be a missing person that year and were actively searching for him. But neither of these reports has been commented on by Russian officials, the CIA, or United States officials, leaving the true nature and fate of Oleg's disappearance a mystery. Russia continues to regard Oleg, his wife Antonina, and their 3 children as missing people, according to the Interior Ministry's database. The US, on the other hand, had claimed that he was a CIA informant who feared for his life after revealing declassified secrets to the opposition and was subsequently extracted to safety. Number 4. The year was 1973 when Henry Baltimore Jr., the first African-American drum major for the Michigan State Spartan Marching Band, was living off campus in the Oak Hill Apartments, a place that would soon become the scene of a nightmarish ordeal. On the 3rd of March that year, 2 assailants entered his home and attacked him. After buffaloing him, the 2 men tied Baltimore up and proceeded to rob him. Luckily, he made it out alive, but was too frightened to report the crime. It wouldn't be until a whole 10 days later that he finally went to the police. With robberies, it's often the case that the perpetrators are unknown to the victim, but this wasn't the case when it came to Baltimore's unfortunate experience. He knew one of his attackers, 22-year-old Roy Davis. The police compiled a photo lineup of 6 people, and the victim was able to make a positive ID, pointing directly at Davis. Instantly, the suspect was arrested, but was released on bond. For the next several weeks, Davis would show up at Baltimore's apartment and allegedly threaten him, warning the victim and witness not to testify against him. These threats would be the beginning of an enduring mystery. First, fearing for his safety, Baltimore would not attend the preliminary hearing that took place in May, which resulted in him getting a $50 fine, and then a warrant was issued for his arrest. 2 days later, he re-emerged and asked for the police to drop the case, but they refused. On the 24th of May, though, Baltimore appeared at the hearing, which was rescheduled. After this, Baltimore told his family that Davis had threatened to end his life, and the whole case was causing him a great deal of panic. Davis's arraignment was scheduled for the 1st of June, when his victim was due to testify against him. But 2 days prior, Baltimore would enigmatically vanish, and suspicion immediately fell on his attacker. On the day of the disappearance, neighbors had seen Davis at Baltimore's apartment, knocking on the front door, but they didn't see what happened after that, leaving the series of events all the more mysterious. Later that year, without the testimony, Davis was found guilty of assault with intention to commit robbery, and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. He was never charged when it came to the case of the disturbing disappearance, and he reportedly had an alibi for that day, even though neighbors had seen him at the apartment. His alibi was supposedly backed by his mother. Baltimore had vanished without a trace after revealing who his attacker was, leaving several questions in his wake. Today, many still wonder if he ran away and went into hiding, or if he'd been kidnapped, or possibly even the victim of a homicide to ensure his silence. Number 3. Robert Levenson was a New York federal agent. He served as a loyal agent for 28 years, initially starting off in the DEA and later being absorbed into the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In 1998, he would retire from his position in the agency and would instead open his own private detective company. It was in 2007 when he found his services being needed in Kish Island. So in March, he left the comforts of his New York home and traveled to Kish Island, Iran, as a private investigator. No one knows what Levenson may have been going there to investigate, but it was certainly something troublesome and would ultimately lead to an enduring mystery. After his arrival in Iran, Levenson vanished without a trace, leaving friends and family bewildered. Despite search efforts to locate him, the agent was nowhere to be found. With Kish Island being under Iranian jurisdiction at the time, the case would garner much publicity. The disappearance sparked concern and became a major topic of discussion in the context of American-Iranian relations. Both American officials and officials of Iran made their comments on the case and seemingly worked together to attempt to solve it. Despite the efforts to track his last movements, Levenson's fate remains just as mysterious as the day it happened. No one knows if he's alive or if he's being held captive for unknown reasons. The most bizarre aspects of the case, though, would reemerge years later. In an effort to prevent the Levenson family from proceeding with the lawsuit against the CIA, the agency gave them an annuity of $2.5 million. Through this odd exchange, something became alarmingly clear. Levenson did indeed go to Iran for business, but it wasn't for his personal investigative business. He was on a mission in Kish Island for the CIA. But again, the details of the mission, or what he uncovered, would never be revealed. In 2020, 13 years later, the federal courts awarded the family another $1.4 billion, which were to be paid out of frozen Iranian assets. It didn't take long before theories began to circulate, some of which suggested that Levenson was being held captive by the government of Iran. But why was the question? Despite this idea being a likely scenario, Iran never acknowledged an arrest. Further adding to the disastrous disappearance was that Levenson, now declared legally deceased, suffered from gout, hypertension, and type 1 diabetes. His passport has not since shown up in any other country. The United States officials had their own ideas about what may have taken place, making the event all the more ominous. They suggested that Iranian intelligence officials had gotten hold of Levenson and took him captive, where they could interrogate him. They alleged that he may have been viewed as a bargaining chip. In April of 2011, photographs of Levenson emerged. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit and holding up signs written by his alleged captors. The signs, written in broken English, were asking for help. After this, though, the leads began to disperse. As investigations were underway into the CIA and the covert mission that led to the disappearance, more bizarre details would reveal themselves. According to some sources, the mission was unauthorized. It sought to gather intelligence about the Iranian government, allegedly for the United States. It came to light that the plan was carried out by 3 CIA officials who seemingly didn't follow the necessary procedures, nor did they seek approval from their supervisors. Essentially, Levenson was sent out on a secret, poorly planned mission, organized by 3 men who had no approval and no protection in place for their agent, who was seeking out some covert information he shouldn't have been. Levenson's disappearance, capture, or demise was inevitable from the very start. Number 2. What happened to Oliver Mson? A question that many are still wondering today when it comes to the mysterious vanishing of a witness who exposed the secrets of a criminal. The year was 1983, and it was January when schoolteacher Mson of Baltimore, Maryland, had his eyes set on a classic vehicle. It was a used Datsun 240Z, and he snatched it up as soon as it went up for sale. 2 months later, there was a knock at the door. Dressed in blue uniforms were a few officers, and the news they came bearing couldn't have been good. Mson was shocked to discover that his beloved classic, which he'd purchased, was a stolen vehicle. 2 months earlier, he hadn't known it, but he'd just bought a car from a seller who was the leader of a sophisticated car theft ring. The classic Datsun had been stolen just a few months before Mson could get his hands on it. Once he revealed the name of the seller, police soon realized that the schoolteacher was not the thief, but rather the victim of one. The leader of the crime gang was a man named Dennis Watson, who owned a garage that served as the forefront of his chop shop. Here, he would steal cars and either resell them with fake papers or simply dismantle them and sell off their parts. For weeks, the authorities had been investigating Watson, and on the 16th of March that year, they moved in for a raid. Law enforcement uncovered illegal titles, dismantled automobiles, and stolen ID tags. One of the records that was confiscated was that of Oliver Mson, which is how they found him. As they confirmed that Mson had purchased the stolen vehicle from Watson, they asked if he would testify in court. While nervous about it and clearly in a state of shock, he agreed. It wouldn't be until a full year later that the trial would finally begin, with Mson expecting to appear in court to serve as a witness against the criminal. It was the 16th of February, 1984, 3 days before he was due to testify, when Mson left for work as usual. But he never arrived there. He never made it back home, and he was never seen again. He had disappeared. A search would soon begin, and 3 days later, his vehicle would be discovered abandoned just a couple blocks away from his home. One of the car's tires was flat, and in the front seat was a sack of lunch and school papers. There was no evidence or clues that would suggest what may have happened to Mson. Then, Detective Goodwin with the police department decided that they were now looking at either a kidnapping or a homicide, and Dennis Watson was their prime suspect. During an inquiry into the case, investigators discovered something truly alarming. There were 2 other witnesses who were due to testify against Watson in trials previous to this one, and they had both also met untimely, suspicious ends. 10 years prior, Clinton Glenn had mysteriously met his end in a car that was registered to Watson. Glenn was due to testify in court against the criminal for armed robbery the next day. The second witness would be testifying in Glenn's homicide case against Watson, but would also succumb to a supposed overdose, so the charges were dropped. Adding another layer of peculiarities to the case was a discovery made by Hilton Solomon. Just hours before Mson vanished, Solomon's car had been stolen. After having retrieved it, he decided to clean it and discovered a hat that was found to be similar to one owned by Mson. There were also several receipts from a video store with the name Oliver Mson on it, which had been smeared with vital fluid. It was found to be O positive, but given that there was no record of the missing man's blood type, it couldn't serve as proof that it was his. The case reached a dead end here, and Munson's disappearance was left unsolved, but it seemingly had no effect on the case when it came to Watson's criminal trial. He was found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Number 1. One of the earliest whistleblowers in history can be traced back to the 1800s, where one man, William Morgan, threatened to expose the secrets of the Freemasons. Morgan was born in Virginia in the 1770s, married in 1819, and moved to Canada with his wife and 3 children sometime later. Described as an apparent unpleasant individual and a failed businessman, Morgan started a brewery which would later be destroyed by a fire, sending the family packing up and moving back to the United States. According to some sources, Morgan was able to join a Freemason lodge in Batavia, New York, where he was living for some time. Some suggest he may have deceived the Masons into thinking he was one of them, allowing him entrance to the lodge where he would bear witness to an unknown ritual. After this, though, Morgan found himself being refused entry to other Freemason lodges. They refused to let him join for unknown reasons, despite his persistence. Angered by the denial, this whistleblower made a grave threat to the shadowy society. In September of 1826, he announced he was going to be publishing an alleged exposé of Freemasonry. That book, named Illustrations of Masonry, would expose some of their best-kept secrets. Regardless of the fact that this information may have been based on lies or would have been incomplete, the local Freemasons saw this announcement as an unacceptable challenge. Being a mostly secretive society, it's clear they don't want their secrets to be exposed, specifically the secret decree ceremonies that Morgan was threatening to detail. Morgan would go on to write his exposé, which he instead titled Freemasonry Exposed. But before he could publish it, a series of strange events would unfold. First, he'd be arrested for non-payment of a loan and for alleged theft. His debt was later settled by a local newspaper publisher, and he was released. But a rearrest for failing to pay a $2 tavern bill saw him back behind bars, unable to release the secrets. A group of obscure men would later arrive at the jailhouse and convince the wife of the jailer to let Morgan out. At first, this may have seemed like a good deed, but once the whistleblower stepped foot out of the prison, he would vanish and never be seen again. There are several conflicting ideas as to what may have happened next. Some say that Morgan was dumped in the middle of the Niagara River, thrown overboard, and some suggest a more obvious homicide committed by members of the Freemasons, but they denied that the whistleblower was slain. According to the Masons, they'd paid him to leave the country, a light slap on the wrist for notoriously negative society. Again, the supposed forced disappearance seemingly had no effect on the exposure of a secret. Not long after his vanishing, Morgan's book was published and can still be found today, allegedly revealing Freemasonry secrets. William Morgan serves as an early example of a whistleblower who threatened to reveal secret information only to vanish mysteriously. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.